we have our second guest, Kyle, today. He's also a member of the club, McMaster Diabetes Association. What's your role on McMaster Diabetes Association?
I'm one of the VPs of social.
Okay, VP Social. So he's here today to talk about his experiences. So first off, just give us a brief introduction of yourself.
Of course. So my name is Kyle, obviously. I'm at my second year at McMaster doing physics. I'm very much enjoying it. I'm also a piano teacher. I teach 6 students regularly. I've taught a couple more in the past. I work at a recreation center part-time. I have a brother who's high school aged, grade 12. I live in Brampton, and that's a little bit about me, I suppose. I've had diabetes for like 9 years or something. 7 years.
So how old
yeah.
were you?
I was 12.
Okay.
Grade 7, a couple days before Halloween, actually. I remember like a couple days after we got back from the hospital is when I went trick-or-treating.
Okay, so do you want to give us a little rundown of that, kind of when you found out that experience?
Of course. I was actually very fortunate. Talking with other people with type 1, I've come to learn that my condition was caught pretty fast in comparison to most. A lot of people end up being wheeled into the hospital like barely conscious. But thankfully I had very diligent parents who were very concerned about me, and they were noticing things about my physical health that I didn't necessarily notice. So they took me to the doctor, and doctor had me pee in a cup, and I peed in the cup, and they came back and they were like, yeah, there's a lot of sugar in here. So I got sent to emerge and at the hospital near my house, and I spent 4 nights there, getting my sugar slowly diluted. I had an IV, learning basically what diabetes even was, because I didn't know what it was. I didn't have any idea at all. My only experience with it before that was I played on a hockey team when I was in grade 5 or so, and one of my teammates, my defense partner, actually was diabetic.
Oh.
And he had a tube pump, and I didn't know anything about it. I just know that this guy couldn't eat sugar. So it was a learning process in the hospital, and finally got out, and it was very difficult for sure. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've experienced,
Yeah.
but as we'll get into soon, I imagine a lot of good things have come out of my experience as well.
And what were kind of the emotions you were going through when you found out? Like from going to the hospital and then finding out the diagnosis, like what were the kind of the emotions you went through with that?
It was really ridiculous because obviously going to the doctor for that visit, I knew something was wrong with me. Like I was drinking a lot. I don't know if anyone watching knows this, but one of the telltale symptoms of type 1 diabetes, when your pancreas starts to cease to work, you get really dehydrated because there's sugar in your blood that can't get to your body. So your body's natural instinct is to tell you to drink water to flush it out. But obviously that's in vain. It's not flushing anything out.
Yeah.
And eventually you just die from dehydration is eventually what kills you. So obviously I knew something was happening. I was drinking like a giant bottle of water like every half hour. I just had no idea it was going to be something as drastic as diabetes. And I remember, peeing in that cup and then waiting. And then when they came in, my doctor was like, yeah, it's diabetes. It was nothing but shock, really. It wasn't really
And did you
anger.
know anything about diabetes?
Nothing, not a single thing. Like I didn't even know the difference between type 1 and type 2. Like my first thought was like, oh my God, how did this happen to me? Like I'm a healthy kid. I play sports. I don't like overeat. I lead a healthy lifestyle. So it was nothing but confusion. But as more things started to come to light, that sort of shifted into this feeling of like, why me, right?
Yeah.
Like of all the people that could have gotten any condition, why did it happen to me, right? That was basically that.
Like that must have been super difficult to find out. And how did your family react to the news?
Oh.
What were the emotions there?
Well, my mom was with me in the doctor's office. It was just me and her, and she was obviously like terribly upset. She was and she kind of had a feeling that it was going to be going in a direction like this. Like herself and my dad had done research, and they kind of had an inkling that it might have been diabetes, but they hadn't told me because they probably didn't want to scare me.
Yeah.
But it was everyone was obviously upset. Everybody was very surprised because I have no family history of this. It was completely random and out of the blue.
Yeah.
So a lot of confusion, but everyone was very supportive. Like I had my grandparents come visit me. Everybody was right there, and nobody was, causing any issues. I have a very supportive family, and that's something I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think similar to our last guest and my cousin, we both share the experience of the family being super supportive and wanting to learn about the diagnosis and learn as much as they can to support. And I think that's like part of it. Just helps so much when you're getting used to a new diagnosis, is like having that support system around you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really
Absolutely. I think one of the things, kind of probably something we'll get a little bit more into later, something like diabetes really forces you to come together with your family and those who work together with you to maintain your health. So that's usually your family, but if you're older, that might be like your wife or whatever. But really coming in and putting group effort into maintaining something like this. It can be a bonding experience. Like my mom and I, like the level of closeness that we're at, probably a lot because of this condition, because she's my primary teammate. It's usually me and her who are working to figure out problems and stuff.
Yeah.
And just that level of interaction has really brought us a lot closer together, I think, than would have happened otherwise.
And you're mentioning all these positive things that you got from this experience, and I know before you mentioned you were like kind of like, why me? Like, why does it have to be me? So how did that shift happen from like why me to like maybe I can think about the good things that will come out of this situation?
It was a pretty quick shift, honestly, because obviously when I first got it, I spent like 2 weeks at home because I couldn't go to school. I was still figuring out like what the hell was even going on. Like my sugar was still a little bit weird. I didn't know how to work my I didn't have a pump. I was doing the injections at that point, so I was getting used to those. So I was just like, no school, right? So for those 2 weeks, I was just sitting there by myself and kind of working through things. And then I finally, went to school, started going to hockey practices, and the first thing I noticed was the way people treated me, and that it wasn't bad by any means. I was never treated poorly by anyone. There was a lot of sympathy. There was a lot of people who were like, expressing like, oh, like I'm really sorry that happened, like asking questions, being like, oh, like you don't look like someone who would have diabetes. How exactly did that happen? So then I would have to explain the ins and outs of type 1 versus type 2. But if I had to summarize, I was getting a lot of pity from people that didn't really know me. Like I would go into like my change room, and then if someone would maybe like ask me a question about diabetes, and I would start elaborating, and then this person I got the sense that they get the feeling that they've asked the wrong question, or that they're pushing me beyond a point of where I'm comfortable, and then they'll start like apologizing and like putting on these kid gloves to talk to me, and that's something that like really rubbed my fur the wrong way, right? I don't like being someone who's pitied by other people. I don't want I want people to be nice to me, right? But I don't want anyone to look at me and be like, oh, I feel sorry for that guy.
Like not see you as any lesser.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I noticed this, and I was thinking, well, obviously, like I can't fault these people. They're just trying to be nice, and I think whenever you're talking to someone who has a condition like that, it's your first impulse to not push and prod because you don't want to like hurt anyone's feelings. But it went beyond that. It's almost like I was being treated like a kid, and I know a lot of that's probably like my own way of viewing things, and a lot of people in my situation, I imagine, wouldn't have seen it like that, and maybe would have been really appreciative of those gestures, but I wasn't, right? So I quickly realized that a lot of people, for lack of a better word, were seeing me as some kind of victim of my circumstances. So I pretty quickly decided that I was going to show people that I wasn't a victim of my circumstances, that I was going to make the best of the situation and show everyone that in spite of having this condition, I can do anything that anyone else can do. I can have the same dreams, I can have the same goals, I can reach the same levels. no matter what. So one of the things that I pretty quickly started to do, I started to poke a lot of fun at myself, right? I remember like a particular instance in grade 7 where somebody was complaining that something didn't work, and they're like, I'm like, oh, just like my pancreas, right? And that was like the first time I'd ever really, done anything like that. And then like everyone was like really taken aback, like, oh my God, Kyle has this condition and he's joking about it. Like, what's even the protocol here? Do we laugh? Do we not laugh? And a lot of people laughed, and I was like, oh, like that's good. That made me feel good. I made some people laugh, right? And I think that's very representative of kind of my outlook on the condition. Like I'm not gonna let it bog me down, and if anything, I'm going to try to use it to lift spirits a little bit.
So you were trying to kind of let people know that it's like not to pity you.
Exactly.
That the condition does not make you any. Like it's not kind of something you're embarrassed of or you need to hide.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Like I'm not. I'm not embarrassed about like my tubes or my sensors. Like I'll walk around on the beach. I really don't care. And the other thing I really wanted people to understand is that I didn't mind talking about it. I always get the feeling like whenever I started talking with someone about people would be like, oh, I don't want to like pry too much, but like, can you elaborate on this, or like, what's that? I'm like, I would love to elaborate on that. I love talking about diabetes, right? Because I get to talk about myself. I get to talk about my condition. You learn something. I learn something, because I find usually when I'm talking or writing, I'm thinking in my head, and then sometimes I'll have an idea that I didn't consider before. So it's to everyone's benefit, really, and it's to everybody's detriment if you're just gonna be, I don't know, an asshole about it. Like if you're going to, get in somebody's face for asking you a wrong question, that just gives the impression that you're weak and you're not dealing with the situation very well, so you're kind of lashing out at others instinctively. It really is about what you show to the world, right? That's what I strongly believe.
And I know you mentioned like some people might be sensitive to the topic when they're first diagnosed, or kind of be angry, and they might lash out at people. So do you think there's certain situations where you can kind of... Please tell me it didn't stop. Okay.
Awesome.
Do you think there are certain situations where you do need to be cautious around people, and if so, like what kind of advice would you give to those people? Because my cousin, he actually went to therapy. He talked about his experience going to therapy for in diabetes group with other kids who were kind of self-pitying themselves, and he almost felt like he gave up in a sense at one point. Like he was so tired of checking his blood sugar all the time, and he was just like, why me? And he was just giving up, like he wouldn't check it. So he went to therapy, and it really helped him. So I was just wondering, like, do you know of any other support systems that maybe you know of, or that other people have used in your life, or
so
battle that?
Yeah, I'll break that down part by part, because there's a lot of layers. First of all, how would I approach someone who maybe isn't as lackadaisical as someone like myself about diabetes? Well, the first thing I would recommend is neutrality. Okay, so first of all, don't be the first one to make a joke, or don't be the first one to like maybe bring it up, or like ask a question, or wait for something to kind of come up by itself. Like if you're in a conversation and like somehow diabetes comes up and it kind of naturally flows in a certain way, then I think 9 times out of 10 you're good to ask a question. And if that particular person isn't dealing with it well, then I think the onus is on them to be like, oh, not really comfortable right now. Maybe we can change the topic of conversation, because it's kind of like a pet peeve almost, right? Like if you have a pet peeve regarding people like bouncing their legs, and you're sitting at a table with someone bouncing their leg, you don't really have the right to go and yell at them for bouncing their leg. It's your pet peeve. You kind of have to deal with it or find another place to sit. It's the same way with diabetes. If you know yourself, if you know that you're not good at talking about it, and if you know that you're not good at communicating it, I think you have to let your social group know, because I think transparency is the most important thing. And 9 times out of 10 people will respect that. I've never ever met someone who didn't have any problems like dropping diabetes, because it seemed like everybody almost already wanted to do that. I always had to be the one like to say, oh, it's okay, we can talk about this, it's fine. And now in response to maybe what other sources people have, if they're struggling. Well, I haven't really. I don't need to like toot my own horn, but I haven't. Thank God, I'm gonna knock on some wood here. I haven't struggled too much. I haven't really battled too many demons, but the best thing for me is just my friends, and not even my family, but like my actual like honest to God friends who are my age, because I find that and I think every teenager can relate to this on some level. You can be a little bit more freer when you're with your friends than with your parents. When you're with your parents, you're kind of trying to uphold this image of like, oh, I'm nice, I'm proper, like I'm a good kid, and then you like hang out with your friends, and then you can actually kind of be your real self a little bit more, right? So if I'm ever annoyed with diabetes or feel like yelling at someone or something, I'll call up one of my buddies and I'll be like, bro, like you won't believe what my blood sugar's been doing today, right? And they'll listen to that. I had like my own social worker when I was younger, like under 18 at the hospital, because diabetics, they have to have these appointments every 3 months where they have to go in and check in with like their endocrinologist and dietitian. It's basically a box that you have to check so that the government sees that you're like, you know, jumping through all the hoops and crossing your T's and dotting your I's so that they continue to fund your insulin. So I would go to those appointments every 3 months, and I'd have a social worker who would always ask me like, oh, everything doing okay, Kyle? Like, how's school? And I'd always be like, yeah, everything's fine, this and that. But I always felt 100% comfortable if there was ever a problem, I could have gone to her. And I think there's also your everyday resources, you know, like you can go see a therapist, like a shrink or whatever. You have schools associations like the MDA at McMaster, for instance. Other schools have similar things. School counselors. There's a whole bunch of options. It's just the hardest thing to do is to actually go to one of those options and like actually do something, because I'm gonna bounce off something you said about you know, your cousin's experience with being your cousin, you said? Yeah, being with other diabetics who seem to have kind of given up a little bit. As soon as you stop caring, as soon as you internalize this idea of like apathy, like, oh, don't give a crap, I'll just let my sugar do what it wants to do, well then you're screwed. Right? Because then you've accepted your current situation, and it's both a curse and a blessing for us as humans. We're very adaptable. So when things get worse, we can make the best of a poor situation really easily. But sometimes that's to our detriment, because we'll get comfortable with something that we shouldn't be comfortable with. We'll get comfortable with you know, having a blood sugar of 13 and 14 every single day. But you shouldn't be comfortable with that. That's very bad for your health long term. And the first step is always the hardest one to make.
Interesting. And if you're comfortable sharing, did you ever have any experiences with maybe friends or family members who maybe bullied you, or any type of harassment in terms of diabetes? I know it's rare, as you said.
I can really only think of one instance where I was like actually ever like penalized, I guess would maybe be an okay word, for being a diabetic, and it was very tangent to the issue at hand. It was just like some 6th grade asshole in my class, and he was kind of a kid who used to bust my chops a lot, and he would make comments like, "Oh, shut up, go eat your Snickers," or something like that. But like that was really something that I could brush under the rug, because that was just like a stupid playground insult that like, I mean, it didn't even make any sense. Like, he doesn't know what diabetes is. Like, I just laughed at the guy. There's a whole bunch of situations I can think of where I've had to like jump through stupid loops as a diabetic. Maybe not like bullying, but like
ever excluded from stuff?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a really recent example. New Year's, I brought this up during the meeting, that New Year's club I went to. Obviously, as a diabetic, I have to bring candy everywhere I go. So I always have the side bag that I have with me, and it's like glasses, wallet, and then usually like 4 or 5 Welch's in there, like my 15-gram fruit gummies. They have a very strict bag policy at this club, obviously. So I go there, and I've like, because there's no bags allowed, I've jammed my pockets with like Welch's. There's like 10 of them in each. And the bouncer is like, oh, like what's in your pockets there? And I'm just like, oh, candy. I'm a diabetic, so I need to carry this stuff with me in case my sugar goes low. And they gave me a really hard time with it. Like I had my medical bracelet, like I showed them like, yo, I'm on a pump, like I need this stuff. But I was going back and forth, and eventually I had to like give them like half of the Welch's that I had. I could only go in with like 4 or 5. And I ended up kind of being shorthanded for the night. Like thankfully I didn't go low, and thankfully they didn't make me like throw it out. They had them like in the back, so if something had happened, I would have had them.
That's
But
crazy.
I mean, it's just a pain in the ass. Like
especially like in a club, like if you were to have a low, it takes forever to even get across the
exactly.
club. Like, how would you?
Yeah, and
get to
this
the
was New Year's.
bar?
Like people were packed, shoulder to shoulder, like chest to chest. Like
And
I would have not.
Rebel. This is Rebel in Toronto for anyone listening who's been there.
It was crazy.
I don't remember if I've been there, but yeah,
it was. Like,
I know it's crazy.
It was like full capacity, 3,000 people. Like if I had been low, shaking hands, like stumbling around trying to get to the front, it would have been a really not good situation. So that's something that really like annoyed me, and I deal with that sort of thing a lot more than I do with any kind of like personal, insults and stuff and such like that.
So just like inconveniences.
Yeah, inconveniences. Yeah. That's a good word.
Okay. Well, that's good that you didn't deal with any sort of major things. Then. Any advice you would tell your younger self? Very general question.
Yep, lots of things. As it pertains to diabetes, though, couple things. Number one, I guess I'm gonna imagine I'm talking to myself like a week after I got diagnosed, so I have like a lot of things to tell me. Look on the bright side, okay? And I'm gonna talk a while about this because I think there's a lot of bright sides to a condition like diabetes. So when you really think about it, there's a lot more conditions that are a lot worse than diabetes, and those are really bad. Like I'm thinking like, the big ones like cancer and stuff, right? Like God forbid I ever get anything like that. The good thing with diabetes is that it's just a giant pain in the butt. Like it's not like really
like a job.
It's not. Yeah, it's a job. It's a pain. It's a duty. It's a responsibility. It's not like you're feeling physically ill. It's not like you're ever really in pain all the time. I mean, maybe when you do your injections, you're in pain for like 10 seconds, but that's different. It's not like there's no like really suffering involved. I'm never in a hospital hooked up to like an IV or like anything like that. It's just a pain. So, well, I mean, pain is good. Pain is edifying. You can take something that's painful and turn it into an experience that's learning. And I think one of the best things and one of the most useful things that I've extracted from diabetes as a whole is being able to like take almost any situation that one would consider undesirable, and you can extract some kind of lesson out of it, or you're gonna think of a way that you're going to move forward in your life differently as a result of this event. And obviously that's definitely not a skill that's specific to diabetes. I just think diabetes has given me a lot of practice at doing that, which is the biggest thing, because everything we do in our lives, I think, is mostly subconscious. Like the way we think is basically just a product of habits that we've developed over the better part of 20 years almost. And we think that we're making our own decisions, but really we're not. We're just kind of following our instincts. Yeah. And it takes a long time to cultivate and grow good instincts and habits. And I think being diabetic since the age of 12 has given me so much time to practice looking at the bigger picture and being able to, look at the bright sides of things, right? Like, I mean, the other month I hit someone in a parking lot and lost a bunch of money because I had to fork over money to, fix the repairs. And that was terrible. Like I was like, oh my God, how the hell did I do that?
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought, well, because of that, I'm gonna remember this accident every single time I get behind the wheel.
Exactly.
I'm gonna drive 10 times more carefully from here on out going forward. And if I'm careful, I'll never get into an accident again, right? And thank God that accident happened in a parking lot and not on the highway,
Exactly.
right? And then when you start looking at things through that lens, everything gets a lot clearer.
Everything's a lesson.
Yeah, exactly. And this can be applied in all aspects of life. The other thing I would tell my younger self is more on this subject of looking on the bright side. Use it as an opportunity. Practice achieving your goals, because diabetes is a game of goals. You're gonna set a goal to have a certain A1C. You're gonna set a goal to not go high today. You're gonna set a goal to remember your blood sugar, or not remember your blood sugar, to remember your insulin. It's all about setting goals and then completing them. So you get a lot of practice setting goals and then working your way to them and developing plans. And I think that's a huge reason why I'm so goal oriented. Like literally for the past 2 years, I carry my entire day based on this to-do list that I have on my phone.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm out or home or anytime, I'm always thinking in my head, what can I be doing right now to check one more item off this to-do list, right? Like that's how kind of I carry my entire day. Yeah, like I'm literally like right now I'm thinking like, what am I gonna do when this finishes? What am I gonna do when I get home? And everything I do in the day, it goes towards checking something off on this to-do list. And whether it's school related, whether it's something personal, whether it's something family related, it's all on one document. And even if I go through an entire day never really taking too much of a chance to sit down and relax, if I get a bunch of things on that list done, I feel so good about myself at the end of the day. And I think like people listen to that and they think like so basically you just like worked all day and went to bed and never chilled and you had a good time. And they think it's so ridiculous, but we're people. Like people feel I think completing any kind of goal makes us feel good. Like we're a species that likes to get things done. We like to show off our fruits of labor and tell people like, look what I did, look what I've achieved. We're that type of species.
I think most people, when I've encountered that, where they kind of, if they look down on me for completing a to-do list, it's like because of toxic hustle culture, people think like, you can't be hustling all the time. Like you need to relax, you need to do some meditation, do some mental, but I feel like take care of your mental health. Like there's a huge resurgence of that, I feel like, because in like the past decade, there's been like hustle culture has been like the priority, right? So there's kind of like people going against it now, but I think it all just depends on the person, right? Like if you are taking care of yourself but also accomplishing all your goals, that's like it's perfect, right? It's like what you thrive off of.
Exactly.
And other people might thrive off something else. So it's like you just need to individualize it, kind of.
Absolutely. For individual outlooks and needs definitely do vary. But one thing I do think in general is it's a lot easier to make it through dips in your life if you're working towards something in the background. Because if let's say you're a diabetic, right, and you've been struggling with your sugars a lot lately, and at the same time you're also maybe chasing some kind of goal. You want to get some kind of job, or you want to get a promotion at work, anything, literally anything, right? Now compare someone who has that kind of goal in their life, that's like that kind of drive, diabetic, same everything. And then you have someone else who is also diabetic, but they don't really have anything big going on. They don't really have any big goals or big ideas. They're just kind of floating through the ether, right? I think having a purpose, having a reason to get up and get out of bed and fix problems is really important, because if someone has no incentive to go out and have their blood sugar in a stable range because they're just at home all day, then they won't. But if you actually have stuff going on in your life that necessitates improvement, that actually imposes like this third party being like, hey, you need to get your shit together or else things are going to happen, then that really galvanizes people to improve themselves. But I think it's really easy to also bite off more than you can chew, and that's something else that also has to be talked about, because I've done that before, and it's a balancing act. You have to walk this line where every day is a bit of a challenge, but you have to also be going to bed every night not like worried about tomorrow, right? Because I think, and I want to focus on this statement: every day should be a little bit of a challenge. Now, what do I mean by that? The way I see it is, in this game of life, you are your own protagonist and you're also your own audience, okay? Because an audience is someone who sees an event in its entirety. And the only person in the entire universe who sees your entire life in its entirety is you, right? Now, since we're kind of using this movie story metaphor, what makes a good story or a good movie? It's a character that actually, has a villain, has an enemy that's difficult, that challenges them, and they have to work the entire story to overcome that barrier, right? And the audience is only gonna like that movie if the character is actually struggling, right? If the character is not doing anything, or it's immediately obvious from the start that the protagonist, which again is you, is immediately going to beat the villain, then the audience loses interest, right? Now, I think
that's really interesting.
the interesting thing about this metaphor is that you are both your audience and the protagonist. So if the audience you loses interest in your own story, well, that means the protagonist you has also lost interest in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not engaged, if you're not thinking every day about what you're going to be doing, what is happening, then you're just going to slowly fall into this state of apathy, I don't care, I'll kind of just go through the motions, this and that. I think the key is to identify a villain, and in life we come across many villains, many obstacles, and as soon as you take out one, there's almost another one right behind it. So you have to constantly have this rotation of objectives. You have to have some kind of meaning, and I think that's the most important thing that a lot of people are missing in today's day and age.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting a bit of therapy sometimes. I feel like a lot of university students also are working towards goals, and they're just working to keep themselves busy, but they don't have a purpose. What would you tell people that are a little bit lost? They don't know.
This is a really awesome question,
right?
because the other thing, and I know for a fact that I'm really lucky, and I'm kind of in a position of privilege because I'm actually studying something in school that I love.
Yeah.
When I'm doing my homework, I'm rarely damn, I wish I'd be doing something else, because I don't really wish I could be doing something else. I love looking at these problems, and finding math and physics and all this stuff. I'm really interested in it, but I know very well that a lot of people aren't as deeply invested into their educations as I am, and if that's the position you find yourself in, I think the only thing that you can do is to find something that actually does really, really make you passionate. And that's really hard to do. That's really, really hard to do. And I don't even know if I can offer any hardcore advice on that right now. Beyond just, if you're trying to find an interest, talk to a lot of people, read a lot of books, go out a lot, see the world, and something's bound to strike you at some point.
Have you ever heard of the flow state?
No.
When you're doing work, so there's these theories about when you're writing, especially. I've experienced it mostly when I'm writing. But it just feels it's only you and the activity you're doing. You forget that you're even. It's just so enjoyable, and you're so in the moment with the activity that it just feels easy to do, even if it's work. And that's I feel that's where people can look to if they are struggling to find a passion. because I've only had those experiences like a couple times in my life.
Really?
And it's been things that I'm really passionate about, like writing or like making videos and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like it's just joyful. There's no other word to describe it. It's just
That's interesting. Maybe I'm in a 24/7 flow state or something.
Okay, maybe.
No, maybe not 24/7, but no,
That's
that
the case. Teach me your ways.
you're right. Well, when I am working, I do like often feel like it's only me, like kind of in the world, and it's a bit of a problem sometimes because I'll get so wrapped up in a particular problem, and I'll just like forget about everything going on outside, whether it's like, the fact that I have to sleep, or it's the fact that I have to go to my friend's house, or it's the fact that I have a lesson. I'll just like zone in on this one question. I won't look at my phone for like 2 hours at a time. And I like it.
Yeah.
It's
because it's very efficient too.
Yeah.
You get things done.
But it took a long time to kind of get to that point. Like I haven't always been like this. It's kind of been a slow build, and this kind of connects back to what I was saying about how a lot of the things that we kind of just do automatically are actually products of habits that we've cultivated over a long time.
Yeah.
If I look at myself in like grade 9 or grade 10, when you really think about it, that isn't that long ago. That's only like 4 years for me. Like I was like playing video games every day still. I was hanging out with my friends. I was having like a lot of free time. I wasn't incredibly concerned with school. But then I started doing AP, or actually I was in AP the whole time. But then grade 11 and 12 started, and grade 11 was the year that I had my AP physics exam.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, I was kind of working for hours every day, nonstop.
Physics was hard in high school.
Yeah, it definitely was, because it's when it gets introduced, and you're totally, it's like totally uncharted territory. But anyway, so like I'm working, and then grade 12 started, and having that practice from grade 11 really helped, because then when I did my next AP exam, it was a little bit easier to work that much, and I was also able to balance my coursework on top of that more. And then when I went to university, I found myself being able to do even more work without really having to give myself a break, right? And then, like, I don't play any video games really these days, except like during the breaks and like summer and stuff. And now, halfway through second year, like I can sit down at my desk for an entire day and just do work, and it'll be pretty much fine. Like I won't really feel antsy at all. But like if you had asked me in grade 10, like, do you think you'll ever be able to do that? I would have said hell no, right? But somehow I found myself being able to do that, and it's almost like I can't even stop myself from doing that. Like it's no longer like a decision I make. It's just the way that I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way that I am, right? Like if I'm sitting at home, I'm doing my work. Like there's no way around it.
I admire that.
Thank you.
That's very impressive.
The only way I really get around that is when I'm with my friends. When I'm with my friends, that's when I allow myself to kind of decompress, and I put all the work to the side, and I just talk, or I chat, or I do whatever I'm doing with my friends at the time. But I honestly, I've gotten to the point where I get myself stressed if I'm not doing something. Which, I mean, sometimes is a bit of a pain, because sometimes you want to sit down and just chill, but you're thinking about something to do like 3 weeks from now, and it's stressing you out. But I think the only reason why something that's due 3 weeks from now stresses me out is because I've like cultivated this mindset over so long, right? But yeah, that's my point about that.
Yeah, well, we went on a bit of a tangent, but I think it was really interesting, probably for the audience. Back to diabetes, is there anything that you think's been left out from this, or do you think is there anything that you're still dealing with in terms of diabetes that's difficult for you, or do you think you mostly have a grasp of it now?
That's a good question. I think that I'm definitely like still dealing with stuff, and it's kind of the thing about diabetes. It's always changing. The way your body's doing stuff on the inside is always, it's never constant. Like I'll have a week where my blood sugar is fine, and then over like 4 days I'll go low like 10 times for like no reason, and that's kind of just like the way it goes sometimes. So obviously I'm still figuring things out, and on like the purely like health side of things, but my mindset, the way I'm thinking, like my state of mind is I think it's clearer than it's ever been. I think
That's great to hear.
thank you very much. I think university has really helped that kind of taking on a lot of responsibilities and getting involved in as many ways as I can has really kind of helped put diabetes in the background almost.
Okay. And do you live off campus?
Yeah. It's about an hour commute between driving and then busing.
Okay.
Yeah, one
So
way.
you live at your family home?
Yeah, I live with my family, and that's another thing that I'd also like to
Yeah, I was gonna ask
fully
you about
disclose. I definitely can see how people would have a more difficult time living on their own, and that's something that I'm hugely sympathetic toward, because I do have a bit of a safety net where I live, which is, again, as I've spoken about, mainly my mother, which isn't really at everyone's disposal. If you find yourself in a situation, if you're one of those people who's living alone and you don't really have a support team 24/7, I would maybe just try to find someone. Honestly, maybe whether it be a roommate or a friend that maybe isn't living with you, but someone who you can talk to regularly. If you have someone in your life that is willing to make that kind of commitment, then that would be awesome. That's my recommendation. I see you're.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting a call. I'm just gonna. Okay, that is great, and I think you've offered some amazing advice, not only in terms of diabetes, but school life in general. And you've said a lot of things that I think diabetics and non-diabetics can relate to, especially I can relate to.
Thank
I
you.
want to get this mindset kind of productivity lifestyle to on. I need that. Okay, let me see if I have anything else. I mean, is there any myths about diabetes that you want to debunk?
Any myths?
Any diabetes myths?
Yes. Yep.
I know we do some of those on our Instagram for anyone listening. I think so, or last year we did at least, but yeah.
So there's two big ones that I can think of, and these are basically questions that I get a lot from people. One, what can't I eat? I can eat anything I damn well please, okay? I just have to do the right amount of insulin for it and make a judgment call. I'm not going to drink a cup of syrup for fun, even though I technically could. It's just not worth it. And if I eat sugar, will I die? No, if I eat sugar, I will not die. I will be fine for a while.
Yeah.
Those are the big myths that I'd like to break down.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, if you have nothing else to add, then thank you so much.
I think I'm good. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone else that would just like to come on the podcast and offer up your experiences, we would love to have you. Just contact me. I'll leave all my stuff in the show notes. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.